At 6 o'clock, we'll call tonight's meeting of the Louisville City Council to order. And we do have a quorum present. The first item we're going to have on tonight is the 2019-2020 Citizens University graduation. City Secretary?
All right, so Pete, can you pull up our presentation on that one? So I'd just like to say this group was a very responsive and participatory group. They were very patient and resilient when COVID hit. It kind of threw our schedule off, and they were not able to live finish their last session, so they allowed us to use them as guinea pigs. And we did a virtual session with them for their last session, and that's going to allow us to be able to move forward now with the 2020-2021 Citizens University program. So I very much enjoyed getting to meet all of the individuals that participated in this last class, and I am looking forward to eventually being able to get back together with them for one last hello and goodbye with them, and hopefully we'll be able to do their wastewater treatment plant tour at that time. So next slide. So just a couple of pictures of the group. This is our first class. They're very, very attentive group, and they had a lot of questions. We did not have a lot of absences in this group, which was great. Next slide, Pete. This is our bus tour, which unfortunately we're not going to be able to do live this year because of COVID, but it's a great tour also, and so hopefully we'll be able to do just as great as we did for this one. Go to the next slide, Pete. This was just the class we had over at the fire station. Okay, next slide. And this will be the certificate. They'll all be getting in the mail. So we're going to start off. I'm going to let each of the members that are present tonight speak a little bit if they would like to for just a few moments. Our first one is Martin Aleman. Martin, are you on? Let's see if he's on. Let us check real quick and see if he's on. Some of them had prior commitments and weren't able to do that. Okay, so we'll go to our next slide. This is Josh Ashford, and I'm pretty sure I saw Josh and his beautiful little on there. Josh, did you want to say anything?
Hey guys, great program, loved it. I'm gonna keep it short because my daughter's talking, so good stuff. I'm really upset that we didn't get to see wastewater, but we'll see it soon because that's like my favorite thing. My wife, she's weird about it. She thinks I'm weird because I love it.
It's a great church, Josh. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Tanya Carlos. I think Tanya was going to be on. Tanya, are you there? So Tanya actually is now serving on Community Development Block Grant Advisory Committee, and she was appointed to that committee during her time as serving on Citizens University. So anybody out there that is watching tonight, just know that once you start serving on once you start the Citizens University program, there's always the option to be appointed to a board during that time period. Next slide. Kevin Nair, and I'm pretty sure Kevin is in here.
I am, yes.
Awesome, yay. Did you want to say a few words, Kevin?
Yeah, you know, this I kind of just signed up for this for a whim, and by the end of it, I got a true understanding of really what the depth and the breadth of it takes to run a city. And it was really refreshing to see how Louisville was focused on getting people access to parks and sustainability and all of those other, things that sort of tie into that really made it rewarding to participate in this. And I certainly hope that, I'm going to have the opportunity to serve on one of the committees or one of the boards in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. John Deal?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hey, John.
So it was great to be part of this. I'm one of the few residents that are part of our Castle Hills community. So for me, it was really important for me to understand about the city, how it works, and most importantly about how we're going to work to integrate Castle Hills into the city of Louisville. So I think the program was done great. Julie, you did a fantastic job. I think collecting all the representatives from the city to talk to us about what the city has to offer and how we work together as a community. So I'm excited and I'm really eager to look forward to what the future brings, both for the city of Louisville and for Castle Hills.
Thank you, John. And just to point out, John was put on the Louisville 2025 Advisory Committee during his time as a Citizens University member. Okay, next slide, please. Milton Grant. Milton, are you there? Nope, okay. All right, and then our next slide. Vivek Gupta, and Vivek is serving on the library board and was appointed during the time he was a member of Citizens University. Vivek, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, there were just so many nuances to running a city day to day that we just didn't know, and the program did a really great job of educating us as residents about, or I guess in our case, future residents of the city and how it works. And I think it helps a lot of things, from dispelling misinformation to just fostering greater understanding in the community of how all the pieces of a city kind of work together. We really appreciate it, and the staff has just been amazing. I mean, Julie, of course, but everybody we saw was super engaged. So, I mean, it really speaks to how well the city is run to see an organization with that level of engagement, pride, and work ethic. So it's really great to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. Okay, and our next slide is John Hansen. And I'm not sure if John was going to be able to join us tonight. Nope. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide then. And Guy Harris. Guy, were you able to join us? Okay, next slide, please. Jeffrey Kratz. Jeffrey, were you able to join us? Next slide. Angela Llewellyn. I think Angela was going to be here. Okay, next slide. Celine.
I'm here, but I'm here.
Awesome.
I think my audio is not that good, so maybe I'm just gonna pass to next right now.
Okay, great, thank you. And next slide is Jim Locke. And I know Jim's here.
There we go. Yes, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this. I want to thank, the city of Louisville, especially you, Julie, and your team for making the Citizens University, available to us, individual residents such as myself, because I certainly learned a lot about the inner workings of the city. It is a fine program, and I am really honored to be have been, a part of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Next slide. Annie, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, City Council, Mayor, residents, and my fellow graduates. First, I would like to thank the City of Louisville for affording me this excellent opportunity to participate in Citizens University. My sincerest appreciation and gratitude is extended to Julie Worster and every presenter. Your hard work and attention to detail were paramount. Each session was thought-provoking and informative. Some things that really stood out for me were the City of Louisville employees. I admire their knowledge, and I want to underscore the word knowledge, their dedication, passion, commitment, punctuality, professionalism, the tenure, as well as the synergy amongst the departments. Overall, I gained a better understanding of city governments and its operations. Again, thank you for this excellent opportunity. I reside in Castle Hills and look forward to the annexation. Thank you all and have a wonderful night.
Scallion, are you on?
Yes, this is Tanya joining. So sorry.
Tanya, you may go ahead and speak.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Tanya, did you want to speak?
I just want to say it was really, I actually enjoyed going on the tours and the understanding how the city of Louisville works. So that was really educational for me, and I really appreciate everyone who, spoke to us. And it was just kind of a good informational sessions. Every place we went to was always something interesting to see, especially the jail. So that was definitely different. But thank you to everyone who did that for us.
Thank you, Tanya. And then Paula Scallion, are you on? Hey.
Hello.
Hey, you are. Paula, did you want to speak? Okay, we'll move on next. If you want, and our next one is Michael Shepard. Michael wasn't able to be here tonight because he had a death in the family, but he did send me a statement that I told him I would read for him. He says, I thoroughly enjoyed the education and presentations by the various departments. It was great to see the feedback from citizens that participated in Louisville 2025 was front and center in decisions and direction enacted for the city. This truly shows a value for those you've served. Citizens University is a motivator to get involved and shows we can all have an impact on making Louisville a great place to live, connect, and grow. The education increased my cognizance and awareness of how the city is managed and illustrated where I can plug in to make.
Want an eggs in the nest for Friday?
For a position when an opening is available. Okay, and the next. Rick Shoven, I know you are here.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. I just like the opportunity to sit in on this and be part of it in the city. And for me, it was, the passion of all the city employees and all the presentations that we went through. One of the things that really hit me was the 911 operators, and that team that sits in that little area up there, and what they do for the city is quite remarkable. It's one of those things that through all the different tours we took, I definitely looked at that and said that's not something I could ever do. And that team up there, they don't get enough recognition, in my opinion. But all in all, I just want to thank for the opportunity, and I look forward to moving on and hopefully serving on a board somewhere and contributing further.
Awesome, thank you, Rick. Next slide. Betty Taylor. Betty, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Betty.
Hi. Well, hello, everyone. I am so pleased to be a part of this. It's been a very educational thing for me. This last year, I had no idea. The view I get is because I'm a volunteer at the fire department and the police department. So that's the main view I had. And you just rounded it out, and y'all were so excited about having us, and the presentations were engaging and kept us on our toes. I really appreciate the effort that y'all went to for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betty. And our last member is Susan Lee Barnon. Susan, are you on? Okay, you go to the next slide. So that's our 2019-2020 graduating Citizens University class. They were a great group, like I've already said, and really enjoyed getting to meet all of them and work with them. We have selected our 2020-2021 Citizens University members. We've selected 15 in order to keep it smaller in case we are able to go back to live classes. But we will be starting off with virtual classes. Thankfully, this graduating class showed us that we would be able to do those virtually. And we will also make sure that the tours that are scheduled for Citizens University will pre-record those prior to the session so that they can see those. Next slide. And this is just a list of the upcoming classes for this upcoming year. So If any of the members signed in late and I didn't catch you, if you want to speak, please feel free to do so right now. Okay, so I will see you all eventually again. COVID's eventually going to let us meet again, and we'll make it over to the wastewater treatment plant, because that is a great church to go see. So thank you all for being here tonight. I appreciate it, and we'll get your certificates out in the mail. Thank you all very much. Does the council have anything they wanted to say?
I'd just like to say thanks for the all y'all's effort in a trying time to get through this. And you will remember this for a good while, particularly the sewage treatment plants, the dog pound, animal control, excuse me, and all of those, everything in there is, it's necessary to have and important, and is something that you will always look back on. Thank you. Any other council members have anything to say?
I have something, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank everybody who participated in the program. I know it takes a lot of time out of your schedule, and to be honest, that's good preparation for being on a board or a commission, because you'll get used to taking time out of your schedule. I always think that you can't go through Citizens University and come out the other end without at least once saying, I didn't know that. I didn't have any idea, or perhaps even, I thought this was completely different, the way the city operates, or for that matter, the complexity of things. So I want to add one last thought. Always consider every Citizens University graduate not just a candidate for other service to the city, but also an ambassador, someone who, if nothing else, when you hear your neighbors saying, I don't understand why the city does, you'll be able to say, I can tell you. So again, thank you for participating.
I had a little something I wanted to say that was very similar to what Neil was saying. First of all, congratulations, everybody. I know it was a lot of time. It's really refreshing to see the excitement that comes with getting involved and finding out more about the city. So maybe it just makes me feel like, hey, I'm not the only one. So I think this is a really special place. The more you get to know about it, for me personally, I feel like the more I get to know, the more I can appreciate where we live and the people that are running this city. And I'm glad that we're in good company now. And I will say, I'm really happy to see that we had several members of Castle Hills participate in the program, because you guys are getting ready to be a part of our city, and we need you guys to be the ambassadors for us in your neighborhoods as well. So there's so many good things about the city of Louisville that I hope that you are happy and willing to share with all your neighbors, and we're looking forward to it. And again, congratulations, everybody.
Well, I want to congratulate everybody. A couple people I actually know pretty well, Jim Locke, Josh Ashford, we were in Leadership Louisville together, and Annie Partee, we worked together at Dallas ISD. I was a member of the first Citizens University class, and I know you guys, I want you not to look at this as the end of just a class, but the beginning of your relationship with the city. Not only will we be ambassadors, but you can also direct folks to our staff that, when they have questions or when they're making these wild statements, you say, well, wait a minute, maybe you may want to talk to Julie or Donna. And I think the one thing that I took away from my time in the class was just how great our staff is. Our city's not perfect, but we strive to do our best. And I know you guys have seen throughout the weeks just how hard they work. And every Citizens University class thus far has been a credit to their dedication to the city and to serving you guys. So congratulations. We look forward to seeing you guys in future endeavors working with the city, whether you're in Castle Hills when you're going to be future Louisville or you're in Louisville now. We want to welcome you all to, I guess you're part of the Citizens University alumni, and that Audra Small will be probably reaching out to you guys real soon.
I think we can move on here.
Very
Thank
good.
you all very much.
Now we'll move on to the workshop. City Manager?
Wanted to,
We're going to go through the agenda first?
yes, sir.
Okay. Let me go on to that then. We'll start off with the Visitor Citizens Forum, followed by the consent agenda. Are there any questions about the consent agenda? Anything need to be pulled? Okay, then we're down to regular hearings under E, number 4. Number 5. Item 6. Item 7. Then we go into reports. That's the agenda. And are we going to have a closed session tonight?
Yes, sir. Fairly lengthy one.
Okay. Now, City Manager, I'll let you take over now.
Okay, so the next item for discussion on the workshop council is a review and discussion of the recommendations made by this year's Charter Review Commission. As you know, Eric's, he's pulling up the presentation. There you go. So section 11.22 of the charter requires that a commission be appointed every 5 years. That requires their appointment, but you don't obviously have to request an election be held. So you can accept the recommendations and do nothing, or you can set an election. So this year's Charter Commission was appointed to begin their term in December of 2019. The term of office by charter is 6 months. However, as you well know, COVID hit during this time, so we weren't meeting for a while. So you actually extended this period of time with your disaster declaration on April 20th. But the commission did come back. We had a couple of meetings, and they completed their service on July 15th of 2020. So as we talked and met with the commission, we did a couple of things. We actually went back through previous recommendations from previous charter commissions concerning items that council had decided not to take to an election. And also we opened up for any issues that the commission wanted to request in general. We did do a survey. We compared our charter to the charters of the 17 cities to highlight any differences, and presented that to the commission also. So the one item that the Charter Commission requested that the council consider deals with the number of members on the city council. And there was quite a bit of discussion about that with the commission. And the general thought, I'm just going to summarize what I believe their general thought was, and that was that the council should consider the addition of one or more seats on the council. So they were not specific on what that should be, but they do think with the annexation of Castle Hills that that should drive addition of some number of seats. So if you go to the survey, Eric, so the survey of our 17 cities shows you the breakout. Only one city has the same number of council members as the city of Louisville. That's Flower Mound. They are significantly smaller than Louisville at 77,329. After that, you have 7 of the 17 cities have 7-member councils, and they vary in population. It looks like perhaps the smallest there would be Grapevine at 53,976, up to Frisco with a population of 188, 170. You have 3 cities that have an 8-member council. Carrollton with a population of 135,710, Coppell, a significantly smaller city at 41,818, and then Plano with a population of 288,061. Then the next category are councils, charters that require a 9-member council, and that tends to get into your larger cities. You have Arlington, Fort Worth, Garland, Grand Prairie, who's probably the smallest of this group, and then Irving. And then, of course, one city has a 15-member council, and that's the city of Dallas. So you'll remember that during our last election, charter election, what the council requested to be put on that agenda was the establishment of residential districts if Castle Hills is annexed. So that did pass several years ago, and it is in place until 2023. So if we annex before 2023, we will immediately go to the residential district form of governance. And so later we'll talk about timing related to whether or not council wants to consider this particular recommendation from the commission, whether you want to call an election, and how that should be coordinated with the potential annexation of Castle Hills. So council, I'll stop there and just let council discuss this particular issue before I move on to others. Any discussion, council, concerning this item?
I'll start the deal on the additional members. If we were talking about having, since Castle Hills, the next annexation we're looking at, that we're aware of right now anyway, if Castle Hills would get their own member, if that's the intent of this, I'm opposed to it. Because if that's the case, then we need to break up the other parts of the city, because if there's 15,000 coming in now, there's 100,000 that are here already right now that they would not be represented by single member districts or whatever you're going to call them, by a particular council member, and they would still be at large, I'm assuming. So
remember the residential,
it doesn't make sense to me.
So remember how the residential districts will work. So a residential district, the person must live in the designated district, but they are voted on at large. And so you would have it with the current council, you would have a configuration of 5 districts that would be drawn based on the 2020 census. That would be one of the first acts that council would do after annexation. So you would have 5 districts of equal population drawn, and then those people would have to live in the district but be voted on at large.
But right now, we're talking about, there would be 5 council members elected from a population, no matter how many there are in the city. Is that correct?
Well, the current, yes, you have an at-large system currently.
Yes, but it would be divided into whatever the deal that comes in on the next census. And assuming it's 115,000, it would be that divided by 5.
That's correct. At the time that residential districts go in place, which would be at the time of annexation.
So it wouldn't be based on how many people or the percent of people they bring in, or how many how much land area, excluding the lake, they are. It wouldn't have anything to do with that.
It has everything to do with population.
Just purely population.
Yes, sir.
So in the case of Castle Hills, if it's more than 1/5, then not everybody in Castle Hills would be in that district.
That's likely correct, but again, the council would draw the district boundaries once we get the 2020 census.
Right. still opposed to it. It would still only be 5 members.
I would just like to read a comment that came in chat from Steve Southwell. He said the proposal would only add a seat. It would not change the manner of election or selection.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Julie, and I'm not seeing that.
Steve Southwell, who was a member of the Charter Review Commission, put a message in chat that this proposal would only add a seat. It would not change the manner of elections or selection. Mr. Southwell, if you do want to speak, if you just want to raise your hand, we can let you speak.
So that wasn't my point, Steve. My point was that the charter has already been changed by a previous election, and that will go into place if annexation occurs. That was what I stated earlier. Has nothing to do with this item. This item is a separate item, but staff would recommend certainly that it only be put on a ballot in relation to the annexation of Castle Hills.
Okay, Steve, can we get you to just speak instead of going in chat? Donna, this is what he said. He said the proposal would only, sorry, that was the same thing. He said that's exactly right, Donna.
Okay, okay.
We've already passed the district, the residential districts. That goes into play with the trigger of Castle Hills, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, so this is, all we're talking about now is if we want to put a charter election on that says, do we want to add another seat?
Right. That is correct. And later we'll talk about, Councilman will talk about the fact that staff would recommend that election be held prior to the annexation. But again, it would be triggered by annexation. If that makes sense, because you don't want to draw your residential districts twice, right?
And when is that data supposed to be available to draw that?
The census, James, I believe that it's going to be available in March. Last number I saw was March of 2021.
So 2 months before the next election.
Yes, sir. That's
Then
correct.
we would get this on the next election?
Yes, Mayor, we have some slides at the end that we can talk about the timing. If there's not any other conversation, I'll go through the other charter
I
recommendations.
have a quick question, Donna. With the extra member, I don't remember how the other when we passed the talking about going to single member districts, when we passed that, I don't remember. Do we have to do that again if we add a seat, or was it worded in a way that we're fine?
Yeah, so what would happen right now, you passed a charter election that makes residential districts automatic based on the amount of land that is annexed into the city, right?
It's not an amount of land, it's population.
You're talking about something different, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, the way the charter is triggered, Mayor, is by land. If you're going to talk to me about how the districts are drawn, it's by population. So in the charter election, it said that if you had a certain amount, and Liz, I don't have that in front of me, a land that's annexed, then that would trigger residential districts. And we did it that way because if we had done some small annexation, and we've done some small sections of Hebron, we didn't want that separate one to trigger residential districts, only a large annexation like Castle Hills. That's why it was written that way. So
we did, but we didn't specify 5. We didn't specify a number. That's what I'm asking.
Well, but the charter already specifies a number. So the charter specifies that you have a mayor and 5 council members that are voted at large. What changes with annexation is now you have 5 council members, a mayor that are elected by a residential district. So if you want to increase the number of council members, you're going to have another charter election.
I I would just say that if we do increase the size, I would I would be in favor of increasing by 2 members to keep the odd voting.
I'm also with Bob on that. If you think about it, so part of the discussion with the Charter Commission was also included quite a bit of talk about whether to keep a weak mayor or create a strong mayor. And if you think about it, and I think they even showed charter language which struck the weak mayor language. So you think about it, if you go with 1 additional person, but you create a strong mayor, you really created 2 additional voting seats. Okay? Or you can just create 2 additional voting seats and then have that same situation where if you have a tie, the mayor gets to step in and break the tie. So given the choice, so really you got 3 options here. You can add a seat and keep a weak mayor, and your odds of having a tie do go up. You can add a seat and make a strong mayor, but you've really created 2 voting seats. Or you can add 2 voting seats, bring that percentage, that likelihood of a tie back down again, and you created the same thing as if you created a strong mayor, 2 voting seats. I'll add one other thing. It kind of gives me angst to create a strong mayor, and the reason is this: the mayor has a lot of responsibilities and duties that are superior to the council, which is appropriate. That's why he's the mayor. But it concerns me to add to that, given especially that the mayor automatically has the bully pulpit on any legislation, to then add to that bully pulpit the ability to vote on it. So I favor adding 2 seats. But if you're adding 1, I don't want to create a strong mayor.
Anybody else?
My 2 cents kind of to dovetail onto that. I don't really have a preference with 1 or 2. The logic that Councilman Ferguson lays out makes sense to me, though. What I think is also an important factor and why I would be in favor of adding seats is that we have some odd voting rules and regulations that we've run across where we have not been able to get enough people to make a vote, or we get into a situation where supermajorities can't be met, those types of things. I think this would help to give us a bit more flexibility. I can also imagine a space where there's a pandemic going on and people are sick and individuals get where they can't make it to meetings. Having that additional body or 2 at the dais gives us the ability to continue to move forward, and we wouldn't be chopped at the knees if we lost a couple of council members like we can potentially now.
And just to add to that, TJ, in my mind alone, we've had 4 instances since you and I have been on council where we've had council members out for 1 or more meetings for hospitalized reasons. 1 was rather extended. So it doesn't take a pandemic to have somebody off the council and sometimes off for a while.
I want to ask this from legal. What's the 3/4 rule? Assuming that still be in play for the charter. The 3/4
On certain topics?
on certain topics. What is 3/4 of 7?
Can't do that.
I didn't have mine with me.
6.
So we would still have to have 5 people there with 7 members.
On the 5th. Quarters would be 6.
What?
It would be 6. 3/4 of 7. It's 5.25.
But anytime you increase one side, it's going to go up. The requirement's going to go up also. And there's some places in the country that have city councils that have 50 members. And that's usually with single member districts, and every little neighborhood has their own carve out. I don't think that's where we want to go on this at all. But
No, I think, Mayor, that was one of the huge reasons why we agreed to the residential district actually being the superior process, because it gave focus that, a council member would be living in those different areas of the city. So we wouldn't have everybody necessarily in one pocket neighborhood, but that they still had to be aware and cognizant of the entirety of the city because it was an at-large vote.
it's a bastardized way of doing it, yes. And it's not a single member district. I don't know, you just can't keep it like it is. And if the population goes to 200,000, then it's 200,000 divided by 5. And that becomes the population that have to have. And it could be a single member district, it could be residential district, it could be at large. Because we also talked about having some of the council members being citywide on some of these different the different deal on the residential districts. That not all of them would be a residential district. It would be the citywide on those.
No, and I understand, but it feels like we're getting into the weeds, Mayor, because that decision's already.
I agree. I think we're in the weeds anyway by doing this.
So I mean, the question really in front of us is whether we're going to have one or two or no additional, right?
Correct. I mean,
You got 1, 2, why not 3?
the decision on the form of government has already been voted on. So at annexation, it would go from at large to residential.
So it would only work on annexation.
Yes, sir. That was the trigger.
What if we double in population, but the annexed area is the same as it was before?
That's not how the charter ballot was written.
It'll be a match for the next.
So and what does it have to be? How much has to be annexed?
8%.
10%?
8.
Population or people?
Land mass.
So it could be no people.
Correct.
That's correct.
That makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, Mayor, that was our ballot that's already been voted on.
I'm just saying what it is. That's not what's been voted on already, is it?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The 8% added?
Correct.
Yes.
In 2017. The charter amendment in 2017.
And what does it say? It isn't part of this deal that said that it was by population or land area?
No. It says if the city annexes the territory in one or more tracts, that increases the geographic landmass of the city of Louisville, excluding the area of Lake Louisville, as it existed on November 7, 2017, by at least 8%. The amendment set out, number on the ballot and passed, would be triggered.
But would we add something if we got more than an 8% increase right now?
No.
It doesn't have any meaning right now then, correct?
Well,
If there's no population.
It's not, the triggering event is not population. It's if we annex the territory that increases our land mass by more than 8%.
What does that say we do? Do we add council members?
No, we become residential districts.
Okay, I'm not talking about residential districts. I'm talking about the annexation would cause more people to be on the council.
No. What passed was you kept the 5 council members and the 1 mayor.
So no matter what we brought in, if it was double the size of the city, it wouldn't add anything to the number of council members.
Correct.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying before, that it didn't have anything to do with that. And it didn't mention at all what happened in 2017, the increase in population.
Correct. is not triggered by population.
Agreed. So it would stay 5 no matter what, until it's changed.
Correct.
That was my point altogether, that we should just leave it the way it is. Why didn't we put in there about if the population went up, or if the area went up more than 8%?
Sorry?
The area went up more than 8%.
Right.
What did that have to do with anything?
That's what triggers the residential district.
So it was just a way to trigger that?
Correct.
So what if it goes down 8%? Does that matter?
No.
Not going to do
We
that.
don't annex any land
Oh, Lordy.
before January 1st, 2023, then the charter stays the same.
Okay. I don't understand why we did the 8%, what that had anything to do with it. Was that trying to trigger something on Castle Hills?
It was just what the council wanted to do to implement the residential district.
Okay. So we're in residential district now,
No.
and if
We're not.
we're not,
Only if we annex.
I'm assuming that's happening, and if we did the residential districts, that would be 5 council members right now.
Right.
If it happened right now. So we're talking about doing this for 2022?
No, I think what the Charter Review Commission, and Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, I think what they were saying is they want to increase the number of residential districts if we annex a land mass of more than 8%.
Liz, I think that's correct, but I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Sorry.
Can you repeat that, Liz, again? Repeat what you just said. We think we heard you, but can you repeat that?
That the Charter Review Commission was saying that we would, that they wanted the council to look at whether they should add more seats, more residential districts, and thus more council seats, if we annex land in excess of 8% before January 1st, 2023.
That is correct.
What?
2023.
3?
3.
Do they know something that we don't?
I think it's just what they discussed, what Councilmember Ferguson and the others discussed, that with the increase of people, I mean, I don't want to speak for the Charter Review Commission, but
What I'm getting at is the number of people doesn't have anything to do with the area annexed. It could, but it doesn't have to.
It doesn't, Mayor, but those are really two different issues. I mean, the land mass was merely used as a trigger for the annexation of Castle Hills, because we didn't want to get involved in an annexation that might have only involved a very small section of property and triggered residential districts. That's why we used that percentage. That really has nothing to do with what we're talking about tonight. What we're talking about tonight is whether or not the council wants to call an election to increase your city council from a 6-member council to a larger council. That could be 7-member, that could be 8, that could be 9, whatever the council.
It could be 54.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I recommend TJ.
I'm sorry?
I recommend 2, and I'm asking TJ for his recommendation.
Well, we also heard Bob for his, so I'm good with 2.
Okay. So council, let me go through the rest of the recommendations, and then at the end of the presentation, we talk about the number or the calling of an election and the timeframes for that. So the remaining recommendations from the commission were recommendations that the council has seen before because they were made by prior charter review commissions. So the first one deals with the compensation of the city council members. The recommendation was that the city council compensation be changed from $50 per meeting to $300 per month and that the mayor's compensation be changed from $50 per meeting to $500 per month, and that pay can be withheld from missing a certain number of city council meetings consistent with what is already listed in the charter in section 3.02, which provides that a vacancy of a city council seat may be declared upon failure to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings without being excused by the council. So there's really 2 issues there. One is the increase of the compensation from a $50 per meeting to a per month, $300 for the council and $500 for the mayor. Second issue is whether that compensation needs to be withheld if a council member is missing meetings. So I'll stop there for council discussion. If you go on through the slides, Eric, go on and flip through. You'll see that slide shows you the wording change. But if you go on to 7, that's a survey of, again, our 17 survey cities that really shows you what drove really the commission's recommendation, where you see the salary, the monthly salary for the mayor and council. So council, do you have direction on this item?
So I'll give you one thought I had when I read this. It adds this additional layer of evaluation. Have you missed a certain number of meetings? And the thought that went through my mind when I was first reading it is I didn't know why they didn't just set a base like $150 per council and then $50 per meeting or something that is, very fluctuates with how many meetings you participate in. When we get into a budget month, it's a lot of stuff. When we go to retreat, it's a lot of meetings. I guess you could say, well, it averages out over the months, but that just would have made as much or more sense to me to say, well, here's a base amount, and then on top of that, X a meeting if you're there, and you don't get it if you're not. And I don't know that that's any more complex than the proposal they put on the table, but that's my 2 cents.
Certainly, that's up to the council. I think a lot of it was driven again by that monthly salary or the salary comparison from the other cities. And most of the other cities have a per month designation, but certainly it's on the table for the council to discuss.
But city manager, I don't know from the table what the other cities do to adjust that figure based on attendance, or do they do that at all, or what kind of formula do they have? And, this one's got some recommendation of putting a formula in, but it's not specific. And I'm just saying at that point, there's another way to do a formula, base amount plus how many meetings you're at. And
in the next column that's not seen right there, there is some comments out there. We can see that.
So council, I would have to go back and review each one of these charters to see if there is a trigger related to absenteeism. I don't remember there being one, but I would want to bring this back to you if you want me to look at that.
City manager?
Yes, sir.
Council, really, that's just a censure. I mean, it has no impact on a city council member by state law, right? I mean, you can't vacate the seat.
That would be correct. That's really the call of the council. You can actually excuse the absences, which is what you have done historically. So I would think if you look at slide 6, go back to that, Eric. So you've got the way this is written, it says that the compensation may be proportionally reduced for failing to attend 3 consecutive regular meetings of the city council without being excused. So again, the trigger is the council has the ability to excuse the absences. So even if you change this, I mean, it gives you the ability to reduce the pay if the council makes that determination, or it gives you the ability to excuse the absence.
So I'm going to come back to part of my point earlier that I'll state a different way. 3 consecutive regular meetings to me, there's not one of our called meetings that's less important than a regular meeting. So the budget meeting, one of the most important, if not the single most important meeting of the year. Retreat, hugely important. We do sometimes special workshops when we have critical items, and all that stuff's not counted. As long as I show up for those regular consecutive meetings of the council, I'm good. And I think that's an oversight.
I think it's up to the council on how you would want to view the compensation. As I said, I can go back and do more review if you want me to bring this back related to what other charters have along those lines. I don't know that specifically.
So let me just add this. I favor I think a much simpler approach, which is a base plus X a meeting, and then we're not trying to figure the rest of this out. And that takes a positive view towards going to the meetings rather than I'm going to hurt you if you don't.
I agree with Neil on that one.
I just have to ask though, what is the, is that going to be how difficult is that going to be to keep track of what the compensation would be on a monthly basis? Are we creating additional burden on staff to take attendance at these meetings? I'm just,
$50 per meeting.
So Kristen, we have to track it now to determine whether you're paid $50 per meeting. So if you've got a base, well, as long as you're an elected official, and then X per meeting, it's all the same homework.
So, but so you're wanting to do it by meeting instead of by month. But if we change this language to instead of saying 3 consecutive regular meetings, if we just said 3 called meetings, would that address your concern with that?
I don't think it's the simplest approach, and I don't think it's the most logical approach. I think it makes more sense to give a base, let's say, for sake of argument, $150, and then that additional for each called meeting that you attend, which essentially we're doing now. So if you make all your meetings in a month, if it's, let's say, a regular month with council, just city council meetings, and you want to reach this $300 goal, set 150 base and $75 per meeting attended.
But what about the months where there's more than one meeting? Now we're having to do a scale of pay per meeting.
No, because you're already doing that anyway. If you go to another called meeting in a month besides a regular city council meeting, you're getting another $50. We're already doing that.
So you're saying that per meeting compensation would be the same, whether there were 2 or 5 in a month?
No, it doesn't have to be the same number as today, but it's a base plus per meeting.
No, I mean the same per whatever that value is going down. If we did a base plus, then let's say it'd be $75 a meeting. That's going to stay the same for every single meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And
well,
so
I will tell you, we're not for the budget workshops, for the retreat. In most cases, that's only one called meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that if you get paid for each day you're there, because we have to do separate things. So. But
not all of them. Some are just a continuation of the meetings. So we don't get a separate, every time we meet, we do not get the $50. So we meet 3 days for the budget retreat. We don't get 150.
Yes, you do.
I would ask that everybody look at that.
Okay.
And I think for all those.
I think maybe we might want to come back to this and rework it a little bit so we can get some clarity I think Neil may be on to something here. Let's just rework it and come back with this.
Well, if we're going to do this, in the past, and I'm not for it, but there were 2 or 3 council members that wanted to have health insurance paid for by the city for the council members.
I don't think that's part of what we're
Let's
talking
do it.
about.
Let's do it.
Well, and it's not what we're talking about, and the Charter Commission turned that idea down.
Well,
That is correct.
We could bring it up if we wanted to. And I'm opposed to it. But it was asked for in the past.
Well, I think the good news is I don't think anybody right now is proposing that, so we can kind of stick with the compensation issue.
So I can bring this back. I'll do some research as to what others charters have in relation to absences and bring it back to you at the next meeting. So if we go on with the recommendations on slide 8, section 3.07, this section deals with the powers of the city council. This was the same recommendation that was made by both the 2009 2010 and the 2014-2015 Charter Review Commissions. And basically, it removes 2 sections of the powers of the council. B says to establish, create, consolidate, or abolish administrative departments and distribute the work of the divisions. And the reason this is being recommended by the commission for removal is it gives the council power to distribute the work of divisions which within the city, but really that is a conflict with the whole issue of council manager form of government. That really should be the responsibility of the chief administrative officer. So that's the reason for that recommendation. The second one is to require bonds, both special and general, of all contractors and other constructing or building for the city and set up standards, rules, and regulations therefore. This contains a clause which requires a bond of all contractors, yet really in practice, such a bond is not always necessary of the contractors. This should be dependent on the specific project. So this is really just outdated language in relation to how the insurance market works today. And so the commission is recommending removal of that item. And I'll wait for any direction from council.
On the first one, is that saying that the city council could distribute work within the city?
That's the way your charter is written now, Mayor. So what that's saying is we would remove that section so that no longer is a power of the council, but is a power of the city manager.
Is that being done in fact?
I'm not aware of it. Well, I'm going to hesitate. It's not regularly done, no, sir.
Okay. I'm unaware of any. I could see that maybe council did it and told the city manager how to split it up. But I don't see the city manager or city council going in into separate departments and saying how they should be run.
I understand, Mayor, but the point is that your charter allows the council to do that.
I agree, but is that happening?
I would tell you that I have seen the distribution of the work of a division changed by the council.
On a regular basis?
No, just one time that I'm aware of. Well, no, it was done 2 different times, I think, by the council.
Has it happened in the last 10 years?
Well, I've been here 30, Mayor, but I'm going to say one time, no, maybe more than, no, probably 15 years ago. It's been a while. It is not something that regularly happens, no. But the question here before you is whether you want this in your charter, because that is then something that a future council could do.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Meaning the change. Good with the change.
Okay.
I'm good with the change too. Both changes.
Thank you, Bob.
Good with it as well.
Okay. Anyone else?
I think it needs to be changed.
Mayor? On the second one that deals with the bonds, is everyone okay with that change? And if I don't hear a no, then I'm going to guess that you're all okay with that one. That one's pretty simple.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be covered in our contracts, correct? So there's no need to have it in the charter.
There's no need to have in the charter. It's covered in your insurance contracts. That's
right.
Correct. Okay. I'll go on to 3.12, official bonds for city employees. This was also a recommendation made by the 2009, 10, 14, 15 charter commissions. So it deletes section 3.12 in its entirety, and that section is really outdated. It requires that the city manager and the city secretary and other officers and employees be separately bonded. And actually right now, because of the insurance packages that we've had, I can tell you in the 30 years I've been here, there is different types of coverage that really gets to that same end, like your crime packages. So the city is protected by insurance without the additional expense of these bonds.
I'm good.
Okay, so if I don't hear any no's, I'm going to go to the next one. Section 5.07, conducting and canvassing elections. So this gets into the fact that state law now deals with specific dates for canvassing, which override the city charter. And so this is a cleanup to remove these sections that conflict with state law. And if I don't hear anything from the council, I'm going to think you're all in support of that. 8.02, development of property. So this one deals with economic development. And so the change here really just, again, brings us into compliance with state law, which already addressed the expenditure of public funds for private development. If there are no questions, I'll go on. 8.04 deals with the Planning Commission. Your charter has always had a provision that required your commissioners to own real property. And the last two charter commissions have recommended that you remove this provision.
It's time.
Yes.
Okay. Section 9.02 is the preparation and submission of the budget. And you'll remember a number of meetings ago, Gina actually gave you a presentation. This has gotten a lot more complex under Senate Bill 2. So we have really tight time frames whereby we have to do certain things in relation to your budget and the public hearings and those type of advertisements. So what we don't need is a further complexity with the charter. And so we've got several recommendations where we are removing any dates that conflict with state law. This would be the first one of those. I'm just going to flip through these unless you have a question. Section 9.06, notice of public hearing on the budget. Again, that is to comply, to remove any complexity or conflicts with state law in relation to your budget. 9.07 is the same. 9.11, so this really deals more with technology changes that have occurred since this charter was written. So in section 911, you still have language of copies being made and printed and mimeographed. And so we're removing that old outdated language and adding the budget shall be available on the city's website or comparable electronic outlet. I don't hear anything. I will go forward.
Julie, just a quick question. How many printed copies of the budget can you recall having done?
Well, I always get one, but I've never had anyone come in and ask for it.
Okay, that's what I figured. Although I do kind of like the idea of still having a mimeograph machine somewhere in City Hall.
We'll have a museum somewhere, councilman, that we can certainly have that for you. Section 9.14 is contingent appropriation. This is, again, dates to the original charter that said that we had to create a contingent appropriation, but as you know, with our financial policies, that is really not necessary because we have fund balances required by city or city council directed policy. So what we've done for about the 30 years I believe I've been here, we always budget $100 to abide by your city charter. We're recommending that this is unnecessary and be removed.
Gee, I'm going to miss it.
9.24 taxes. So we are deleting the reference made to a city assessor collector. We did have that position for a number of years, but we removed it, I would say, at least 20 years ago, if I'm remembering correctly. So this would just bring the charter into compliance with what we actually do. Okay, so those are all of the recommendations made by your current charter commission. And so let's talk a bit again about that number selection and term. So in your charter, charter election can only be held once every 2 years. So in 2021, if you were to want to call a charter election, you would have to have that May 1st of 21 or November 3rd of 2021. And why we are recommending that you call it for May of 2021, if you so choose. There's no requirement here, but if you so choose to call a charter election, we would recommend that you do that prior to the potential annexation of Castle Hills, which we're looking at the September, October, November timeframe. Remember, we have to have that annexation done prior to January because we need to be able to take the values in the roll and be able to base the next year's budget on it. So if you want to do it prior to your annexation, we would recommend that you hold it May 1st of 2021. And if you so choose to do that, council, you have to call it by January 18th of 2021. The next slide just has the ballot language related to your residential districts. So council, what I would recommend at this time, since we do have an item for me to bring back, what I'll do is on the next council meeting, I'll do that research and I'll bring it, well, I won't, my staff will, and I'll bring it back to you. And then you can further discuss and look at a date for the election if you so choose to call one. Is that okay with the council, that direction? I see Neil nodding, but I can't see anyone else.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, that's what we'll do. So now we have a second item on your workshop, which is an update on Lewis 2025. You'll remember that when we started this touch point process, we actually started discussing it at last retreat. But you really were very specific that you wanted to make sure we were bringing back updates as we move forward in this process. Certainly we got slowed down with COVID, but we're back on track. And I have Karen Walls online to talk with you about the most recent draft.
Thank you, Donna, and it's good to be with all of you this evening. I'd like to, Julie, I believe I should share my screen, correct?
Yes, you should.
Okay. Let me do that. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see the screen now.
Yes, we can.
We met in July and had an update at that time about what we have been working on the 2025 update since the time of retreat. And obviously this, as well as many, many other things, were delayed or changed or turned upside down because of COVID and all the other things that have gone along. What I'd like to share with you this evening is the drafts that we have developed since the time we met together in July. And so firstly, I want to let you know that during the time since I talked with you last, we've reviewed all of the input we received in the past. We also have tried to incorporate the recommendations from the Mayor's Commission, the Listen, Learn, Lead recommendations, where those fit and are appropriate within the 2025 update document. We've made those recommendations. We also met with the 2025 Advisory Board to get their input, and the staff and I have been doing a lot of collaboration about the objectives, about the way those should be framed, and about the action priorities for the short term. So what I would like to share with you this evening are drafts of those policy statements. I believe you also received a copy of these in your packet, so you may have had a chance to look at some of the specific wording. I'm going to go through all of the wording of these drafts, and I'm happy to talk in detail about any of those that you're interested in, or I'm also happy to receive any other kinds of comments after today. The drafts, as I said, these are drafts at this point. We still have more work to do. This is not a final version of these things, so I'm hopeful to get input and feedback from you this evening, but this is not the last time you'll have an opportunity to provide that kind of input. So what I wanted to review with you today are the goals, the objectives, and the action priorities. If there are other issues or ideas or other kinds of guidance that you would like to provide, I'd like to get that as well, because after this meeting, we will be working together to complete the entire draft of the updated document. So just as a quick reminder, the vision statement describing the future Louisville that we aspire to create by 2025 and that will continue through the year 2035. But you'll remember that at this point we're looking at an update to refine what needs to happen in the next 5 years, but also extend that vision and extend our objectives going forward beyond 5 years or up to 2035. For each of the big moves and each of the strategic moves, there is a goal that's a statement or an outcome. There are objectives that are more detailed than that goal, but they provide the broad direction on how to achieve that goal. And then thirdly, there are action priorities, and what we've tried to do with these are make them be specific projects or specific steps, things that can be accomplished in the shorter term. And some of these will include maps and graphics that show those connections. You'll see one of those this evening, but there will be more of those kinds of graphics in the document as we complete that. So firstly, the vision statement, and this is a vision statement that you saw, we discussed it at retreat, and you saw a revision of it in July as well. So we have the statement that by 2025 and beyond, Louisville will be a community characterized by diversity, connectivity, resource management, and growth. Each of these statements are ones that you've seen before, and I believe that people were all comfortable with these when we discussed them last. We also, as you'll remember, have changed the listing of the moves in the plan based on your direction at retreat and then again in July, that we now have 7 big moves. These are continuing, but in some ways combining the big moves that were in the 2025 document. We are also including 3 new strategic moves that pull together things that had been in other council policy direction, so everything is in one place. And those tend to be more internally focused, though not entirely. What I'd like to do now is go through each of those moves and show you the language as it stands now. You can see these are each drafts. And as I said, I'll be happy to entertain any comments or questions from y'all on any of these. With Big Move, I'm going to highlight just a few of the things that are notable or are different in the wording since what we had in the past plan and in the discussion earlier this year. With the Big Move 1, the green centerpiece, much of this is very similar to what we have had before. In the action priorities, we've tried to really strengthen the connection between the green centerpiece and the rest of the community. One thing we've added that's a new point here is developing a plan for the landfills and the adjacent properties so that their future use enhances the green centerpiece. We've also emphasized the focus on ecotourism in Louisville through the investment here and through Lila. We've continued a number of the other projects that you have seen before in terms of infrastructure, the hike and bike trails, work with Friends of Lila and other partner organizations. On Big Move 2, extending the green, these objectives are very similar to what we've had before. We want to translate the value of the green centerpiece throughout the entire city. So I think at the objectives level, most of these things will look very familiar to you. In terms of action priorities, we are looking at updating your adopted plans. We're looking at leveraging facilities such as Thrive and such as the Future Nature Center to promote healthy lifestyles, create social cohesion, and develop a deeper connection with nature. This is one of the ways in which we're thinking about inclusiveness of the entire community. The Parks and Trails investments, the 10-minute walk from where you live to a park is obviously a priority for the city at this point in time. We've added some other things to strengthen some of the connections to the green centerpiece. Several of these are very similar to the action priorities that are underway now and would continue into the future. In Old Town, for this big move, we've changed these objectives somewhat. In the discussion that we have been having over the summer and into the fall, we've felt like there are really two big objectives to emphasize about Old Town. The first is Old Town's role as the central place that anchors what's unique in Louisville and that makes it a regional destination. So that idea of Old Town being special because it is a central destination. The second objective here has the idea of enhancing that core that is the destination, but also expanding and connecting it with the places throughout the Old Town district, not just the core of Old Town, connecting it to the DCTA station and to I-35. So we've revised these objectives somewhat to give them more emphasis on those two key ideas about why Old Town is important. Many of these action priorities are similar and continue the work that's been going on since 2025 was adopted, but there are some additional specifics that we've tried to add in here. One being that you can see here, use Wayne Ferguson Park and other public spaces to promote health and safety, creating common ground where the community can gather. One of the lessons I think that we have learned during the last 6 months with COVID and with all the other activities and the listen, learn, lead is the notion of having a place that is really the community's central common ground. And so we've added that kind of emphasis as one of the priorities for action to implement this part of the updated plan. With Big Move 4, diverse and thriving neighborhoods, remember that this is the combination of two big moves from previously the thriving neighborhoods and the new neighborhood choices. So the objectives that you see here have been updated to reflect both of those things and to reflect action that's gone on since the time the 2025 plan was adopted. So for example, you see Objective E of including Castle Hills and its residents as an integral part of the Louisville community, as opposed to the objective before, which was evaluate annexation. So you can see some of these have reflected the progress that's been made. The first action priority here is one I know that you've discussed before, which is conducting a housing study to get an understanding of what the needs are, what inequities, if there are any, and to address them based on information and facts through a study to be created. So that's one of those that's an important one. Another, obviously, completing annexation of Castle Hills. This third bullet here, which is kind of a lengthy bullet, but gets to the idea of essential neighborhood resources and services. We've learned in the time since we've been having to deal with COVID that there are often things that people really need to be able to get access to close to home. And so the idea here would be to work with other partners to define that set of what are those essential resources and services, and how might we go about making sure that those are accessible. In a way, this builds on the concept like in parks and recreation where you want those close to home, but it continues it for some of those broader things that people might need to have access to. Several of these other action priorities relate to targeted neighborhoods. Those would be targeted based on the updates through the housing study, and we'd be looking at ways to use tools like the Housing Finance Corporation as a way to help meet the affordable housing needs. I know that's been a topic of much recent discussion and one we've seen even more evidence in the last few months. We're continuing some of the programs like the nuisance abatement programs for multifamily and hotel properties, continuing to support and promote high-density housing in mixed-use areas, such as at the DCTA stations in or near Old Town and at the 4 nodes along I-35. So that continues work that has been going on and will continue moving forward. The last item here about including sustainability considerations in new housing, in adaptive reuse and rehab assistance. This is an item that reminds me to point out to you the follow-up on the discussion we had at retreat about sustainability and where that should fit in the plan. We agreed and you directed that we continue to have one big move of sustainability, but we wanted to be able to reflect where sustainability is included elsewhere in the document as well. We've come up with the idea of having a little icon. So this is an example of one of those action priorities that would have a little green leaf icon to indicate that this part of the Big Move 4 is also helping to support our sustainability initiatives. Big Move 5 has the biggest change that I want to focus on and point out for y'all. This big move used to be called employment centers, and the goal had to do with expanding and accommodating the employment centers. It was focused on those physical places that were the location of major employers. As we've been going through and thinking about the input we received at Touchpoint and last fall, thinking about what's gone on in the last several months, and looking really at some of those action priorities that y'all have discussed before, we realized that this is not just about particular major employment centers, but rather it's about helping Louisville residents have the kind of job training through the school district, for example, to help them be able to get the jobs that are available. It's about supporting existing small businesses and helping them to grow. It's also about those employment centers. And so the discussion that the staff and I have had most recently is that we're suggesting that the name of this move be changed to economic vitality to reflect that broader view that this is not just about certain physical locations, and therefore the goal would be what you see in this draft: sustain Louisville's economic vitality by assisting its residents, supporting its businesses, and enhancing its employment centers. So that goal and the objectives that you see below would make a broader statement about how economic development is working and about how it connects to the community. And the idea really, as one of the 2025 advisory board members said, this really should be about helping people be able to work and live both in Louisville. So I think that's one that I particularly wanted to point it out because it is a notable change all the way up to the title of the big move from what you have seen previously. Action priorities focus on reviewing economic incentive programs, the long-term success of employment centers. Those will look familiar because they've been included before, but partnering with education providers so that children learn the valuable skills needed to fill the green jobs of the future. That's an input we heard from the touch point. Access through technology and lifelong learning through the resources at the library. This is a connection to the library strategic plan and something we heard from the library board members. So I think that this is really a good broadening of the notion of economics and economic vitality that will support the work that the city does now and support partnerships for economics as well. I know at retreat we talked about the challenges of lack of affordable housing and that's having an effect on businesses in Louisville. So we're looking at making that connection with this last item about helping to have a wider range of housing available in Louisville and connection to transportation hubs, again, so that people here can get to the jobs that they need and that the businesses here in Louisville can get the workers that they need. So there's several others related to the economic vitality as well. You can see many of these relate to partnerships. These are not projects that the city does by itself, but does it with partners, the chamber and the school districts and others. Big Move 6 is also one that combines several of the previous big moves. We had one on identity focal points, and then we had one on communications and marketing and communications. At retreat, the point was made that this should also focus on the sense of place. So the goal here includes all of those ideas, as do the objectives. You'll see that we've added some objectives such as this objective B about celebrating and communicating Louisville's diversity and heritage through public art and community events and activities citywide. This is one that's a response and reflection of the Listen, Learn, Lead recommendations. We talked before about the idea of distinctive gateways into the city and identity focal points at key intersections, so you'll continue to see that. One of the things that we've done now, we are suggesting some new gateways and some new identity focal points, and so I wanted to show those to you on the map first so that you can see those. We have the Northern Gateway up here, which is the area, and these areas, as you see them now, reflect the boundaries in the I-35 overlay, so they are more precisely bounded things than the ones that you saw earlier that we had in the 2025 plan. So we have the Northern Gateway, the Southern Gateway, both of those existed before. We're recommending an Eastern Gateway that would incorporate areas in and around Castle Hills as people come in on 121 in this direction. And we're recommending a Southwestern Gateway when people are coming into the city from 121 from DFW, that this is, that all of those four are major gateway points that we think should receive some special attention. We also, in the existing 2025 plan, we had what's now called the Central Identity Focal Point. This is at 121 and 35. This is also one of the focal point, one of the areas or the cores in the I-35 overlay district, but it's not a gateway. You're already in the city of Louisville at this point. So we're suggesting that this be considered an identity focal point. The same with the Main Street identity focal point right here. Again, these reflect what's in the I-35 overlay. And then we also think that the Crown Center, as we think about the annexation of Castle Hills, we think that the Crown Center itself in that area is appropriate as an identity focal point too. So the graphic that you see here helps to then explain some of the action priority recommendations. we think that the recommendations here would apply to all of those different ones, that in each of these cases we're trying to engage the residents, the property owners, and the stakeholders, have them help us come up with names for these areas. Just those points of the compass are not necessarily that compelling, so we think that there could be an opportunity for that, that we're using design, new development, public art, open space, etc., to reinforce the sense of place at each of those special locations, and then improving the gateways, and not only thinking about those gateways for drivers, but gateways on trails for pedestrians and cyclists. For each of those gateways and identity focal points that I just mentioned, there are particular action priorities. In the case of the Southern Gateway and some of the others that were already in the 2025 plan, these update to reflect progress and the current status of the areas. So that's true on Southern, that's true on the Northern Gateway. On the Eastern Gateway and the Southwest Gateway, we've identified action priorities to begin creating those and to develop that design. I'll note on Southwest Gateway, this will tie into the Green Ribbon landscape design, the grant that the city has received for that area, and again, supporting international trade and distribution as this is really kind of connecting to DFW. On the Central I-35 subdistrict, these update what was in the 2025 plan. On Main Street and Crown Center, the action would be to work with the stakeholders to develop something, in the case of Main Street, to leverage the presence of the hospital and look at a focus on medical health and wellness activities in that area. That we think that could be one of the focal points there that would be sensible. But these are really beginning to work with the stakeholders in these areas. The final thing here as far as places is distinctive places, and this gets to that sense of place that throughout the city, not just at the big scale of identity focal points, but at the scale of places within new developments, that these should be created in a way that makes them distinctive, helps to celebrate and connect with their history and their identity or their natural features, and that there should be messaging and wayfinding to help people find their way to these places, which may not be ones they're familiar with already. So we want to look at that as an action priority. In terms of communications, the items that you see on this set of action priorities build on what's been accomplished since the 2025 plan was adopted, continuing to strengthen the brand and identity, for example. But we've also added some emphasis here about inclusive engagement and continuing to use innovative engagement techniques as this changes over time, because that's something that we know and we heard through the Listen, Learn, Lead, that it's important to connect to people where they are and using all the tools that are possible there. The last of the big moves is sustainability. The definition of sustainability that you see on the screen now is continuing the one that's in the 2025 plan, using limited resources in a way that provides a desirable quality of life and business climate, and allows Louisville to continue providing that into the future. The goal remains the same. The objectives are, I think, very similar to the ones that you saw in the existing 2025 plan. When it comes to the action priorities, these action priorities are intentionally linked to the sustainability action plan that is being developed now. So for each of these items where you see here, for instance, this green word energy, each of these is one of the categories in that sustainability action plan. So these provide the broad direction, and that plan will provide the specifics. That continues here through each one of the categories that are in that plan. Moving to the strategic moves, as I said earlier, these are more focused internally to the organization, but not solely that. So the first one of operating the City of Louisville as a values-driven organization. A couple of things here that have been emphasized: having a city workforce that reflects the diversity of the Louisville community, inclusively engaging the residents, and continuing to achieve the Louisville way throughout city operations. So those are, I think all of those are important objectives. The action priorities build on the work that's gone on in the past and continue moving forward with things such as a future Blue Ribbon Committee, a future bond program, and so forth. Looking at public art, continuing that, enhancing transparency, that's a theme that we've heard a lot about as well over the last year, or really more than that, but certainly this year. Strategic move 2, data-driven organization, is one that focuses on things like using information to make smart decisions, control the cost of delivery of service, and to make things transparent, as you've done with your dashboard. So this is one that continues and kind of builds on the successes of the last several years. Action priorities help identify things like strengthening data sharing collaborations with counties, hospitals, and medical providers. So issues like coronavirus, there's a way to use metrics to know what's going on or what might be done or what might be needed. Data generated by volunteers and nonprofit groups as well as public agencies. That was a suggestion that came from the community at the Touchpoint back in January. And continuing to monitor the impacts of things like COVID on future operations. Last point I think I would make here is the idea of conducting a process like the Touchpoint at least every 5 years so that the community can be really engaged in evaluating progress towards these goals and looking at refinements that might change the situation. It's amazing to think back that it's only been 5 years since 2025 was adopted, and yet there's so many things that are different now, different opportunities and different challenges. So just building in the idea that the city will review those every 5 years is something that's important. The last of the strategic moves, connected city, using technology and design to be a connected city. This does relate to things like communications, but it also relates to transportation, and it relates to that kind of multimodal connectivity. These objectives, I think, are pretty similar to what you saw in our earlier discussions. Part of this idea here would be to broaden the use of the 10-minute walk to a park initiative, so it's helping people get to other kinds of destinations in addition to parks. Working with DCTA, I know that you are working now with them on micro mobility providers, as we heard about at Touchpoint, helping to improve their efficiency, effectiveness, and connection to DART to better serve Louisville residents and businesses. A number of other items that relate to particular aspects of technology or of transportation and mobility and connection within communities. So there are a number of the action priorities that are included here. The timeline, just to wrap up the presentation here, is we have the workshop tonight to give you this update. From now through December, the staff and I will be working on completing the draft of the plan. So what you're seeing today is the policy direction, the critical substantive part of the document. But you'll remember there are other background sections. We want to update those. There will, I think, be some more opportunities for some dialogue with the boards and commissions. The library board, for example, on the way that this connects to library and to library strategic plan. We'll hopefully have some kind of outreach, virtual or otherwise, in January to connect to the community once more. And then we would plan to review the draft at council retreat next year. I think this would be one of your major items to look at. At that point, you'd have the whole draft of the revised document, and then following retreat in March to begin the process for taking action on that updated plan. So I think that's the schedule as we see it now. As I mentioned earlier, I'm sure that there will be continuing revisions and refinements to the draft, the statements that you see this evening. So at this point, I would appreciate any feedback that you have, but want to emphasize that this is certainly not the final opportunity for you to share your ideas and your direction. So with that, I'm happy to have questions and discussion on any one of those items, I know there's quite a lot to cover there. And would just say too that this plan has been such a successful thing for Louisville. It's exciting to see the refinements and updates and the enthusiasm in the community and among the staff in making an even better, updated and revamped version of that. So with that, let me see what questions or comments there might be.
Karen, I have one question. I looked at this earlier, but I got to go back through it. It's a lot of information here.
Sure.
But if I have some thought I want to share at this point in the game, who's the best person to send that to in writing?
That would be myself.
Yep.
That's Donna.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else, Council?
I just wanted to make a quick comment about big move number 5. I really, really like the direction that we're moving with the economic vitality over the employment centers. I really, really like it. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Great, thank you.
Council, it really has been amazing to me when we started talking about this process and the need for a touch point. It's been amazing to me how many changes that we did make to this document. If you remember, when we first kicked off the whole 2025 process, we really invited the community in. There was no real methodology to make sure that we were touching all aspects and components of our community. This time it was much more specified, so that we made sure not only did we open it up for people to come to us, but that we went out to various groups in the community. And so I really do believe that the input that we got from the community has been much broader and better balanced than perhaps previously. With that, if there's no other questions, we'll be spending a lot more time on this in the future. If you do have questions, you'd like to sit down and chat with me, we can certainly do that. And then we'll be focused at City Council retreat, and we'll be asking you to set the date for retreat at our next council meeting. So Mayor, that would be the workshop.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Karen.
I was muted.
Visitor Citizen Forum. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor rather than to individual council members or staff. Speakers can speak clearly and state their name and address prior to beginning their remarks. Speakers will be allowed 5 minutes for testimony. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council is restricted from discussing or taking action on items not listed on the agenda. Action can only be taken at a future meeting. Mayor, I did have one individual that advised she was going to sign in to speak, but I don't know if she's in right now. Is Natalie Boyer in? Or any hands raised?
Julie, can you repeat that name again? We're really having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry, Natalie Boyer?
Natalie Boyer,
Yes.
did I get that?
I don't see her.
Okay, she must not have been able to sign in this evening, so we can move on at the mayor's direction.
Okay, let's move on.
Consent agenda. All of the following items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests. For a citizen to request removal of an item, a speaker card or e-comment card must be filled out and submitted to the city secretary. Mayor, I received no cards and we do not have any hands raised to speak.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to
approve. Consent agenda.
Second.
City Secretary, will you call the roll?
So Councilman Troyer made the motion, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Aye.
Mayor, those were all aye votes.
Okay. Now we're down to E, regular hearings, number 4.
Consideration of 2 variances to the Castle Hills Development Agreement on property located to the north side of the King Arthur Boulevard and Morgan Le Fay Lane intersection. Castle Hills Development Inc. desires to replat a lot to create 2 single-family lots and 1 open space lot and requests 2 variances. A, to allow an existing 8-foot wood fence with stone columns to remain, and B, to reduce the building setback from a drainage easement. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the 2 variance requests as set forth in the caption. Planning Director Richard Lutke is available to address any questions.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the 2 variances as presented.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? City Secretary, call the roll.
So Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson made the motion. Councilmember Gilmore seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Aye.
Mayor, those were all aye votes.
Thank you. Number 5.
Consideration of a franchise ordinance for the collection and disposal of residential and containerized commercial solid waste and collection and processing of residential and multifamily dwelling recyclables to Allied Waste Systems, Inc., DBA Republic Services of Louisville. This ordinance will start a new 10-year contract transferring all aspects of the current franchise agreement and recyclable materials processing into one contract. The Louisville Charter requires 2 readings of this type of ordinance with 30 days in between. The second reading will be on November 16, 2020, with the ordinance effective on January 1st, 2021. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the ordinance as set forth in the caption above and authorize the City Manager to sign the agreement.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I believe Councilmember Gilmore made that motion, sir.
Do what?
I believe Councilmember Gilmore made the motion. Is that correct, Councilmember Gilmore?
So moved, but I do have 2 small nits to pick at some point.
And we do have Jerry Harwell with Republic. She is on the Zoom call with us and can also help respond to questions. Do you have one of Republic?
Jerry Harwell with Republic is on also, sir.
Okay.
Can I hear your nits, Steve?
I believe Councilmember Gilmore had a question
Okay.
or comment.
Just 2 small nits. The contract looks really solid. One was the cart tagging program. Should we exceed 25%? Who pays for that?
Republic Services.
Okay, and what's the limit on that? Because I know that you guys have limits for other dollar values on education. Is that part of the education budget that you have, or is it something else?
No, it is not included in the education budget. We want to clean that stream up more than anybody. So
everybody does. Yep, absolutely.
Right. So that's ongoing.
Okay, just wanted to see where that was. And then the other one was the residential free disposal. I didn't see a volume there. Maybe I missed that, but it seems like a resident could bring in virtually unlimited. Now, I get that there's a judgment call at the gate, but I would think that a volume or a specific number would be easier to maintain and manage, both from a city perspective and from the gate agent.
Well, actually, the volume of going into the landfill is something that you guys had already worked out with the city of Farmers Branch. So that's actually in your contract with the landfill.
So the residential, the amount I can bring in my pickup truck or in a trailer is marked out somewhere?
No, well, no, let me rephrase that. The number of trips that they can make, but you do bring up a valid point, and we'll make sure that we cover that.
It just would save everybody some a headache, and you know that better than anybody here, Jerry.
Absolutely, believe me,
people take a mile at that particular effort.
I've looked at this contract so many times, I could probably cite it to you backwards and forwards, but I missed that one. So we'll have that discussion.
No worries. Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the work you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before I call for the motion?
Second.
Have a motion?
There's a motion and a second, Mayor.
Just a motion.
Just a point of clarification. Councilmember Gilmore, is your motion contingent on the contract? No? Okay.
No, I just wanted to bring those 2 points up. I know those are conversation points that could be had without slowing this process down.
So you'd already made one before you made the points?
Well, normally we do a motion and a second and a conversation, but that's obviously been Zoom destroyed. So okay.
I did second it after he made the motion.
We have a motion and a second.
Yes, sir.
Okay. City Attorney?
This is an ordinance for a contract and exclusive franchise for collection and disposal of residential garbage, refuse, yard waste, bulky waste, and containerized commercial solid waste and collection and processing of residential and multifamily dwelling recyclables within the city of Louisville, Texas.
City Secretary, call the roll.
Councilmember Gilmore made the motion. Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson?
Aye, but I think Bob did second the motion.
Okay, I apologize.
And I didn't realize that I just forgot. So give him the aye.
Councilmember Gilmore?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Aye.
Mayor, those were all aye votes.
Thank you. We're down to number 6.
Consideration of a resolution approving a negotiated settlement between the Atmos City Steering Committee and Atmos Engineering Corp. Mid-Tex Division regarding the Atmos 2020 Weight Review Mechanism filing, declaring existing rates to be unreasonable, adopting tariffs that reflect rate adjustments consistent with the negotiated settlement, finding the rates to be set by the attached settlement tariffs to be just and reasonable and in the public best interest, approving an attached exhibit establishing a benchmark for pensions and retiree medical benefits, approving an attached exhibit regarding amortization of regulatory liability, requiring the company to reimburse ACSC's reasonable rate-making expenses, determining that this resolution was passed in accordance with the requirements of the Texas Open Meetings Act, declaring an effective date and requiring delivery of this resolution to the company and the ACSC legal counsel. On March 31st, 2020, Atmos filed a rate request claiming that its cost of service in the test year ending December 31st, 2019, entitled it to additional system-wide revenues of $141.2 million. Pursuant to this negotiated settlement, Atmos would receive an increase of $90 million from ACSC cities, which includes Louisville, but with a 2-month delay in the effective date until December 1st, 2020. This should save ratepayers approximately $9 million. The recommendation is that the City Council approve the resolution as set forth in the caption. Jan Ruck from Atmos is also available if the Council has any questions.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
Move to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, City Secretary, call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson made the motion. Councilmember Jones seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green?
Aye.
Mayor, those are all aye votes.
Okay, thank you. Now we're down to item 7.
Consideration of a resolution extending the declaration of local disaster for public health emergency signed by Mayor Rudy Durham on March 13th, 2020 until 11:59 p.m. on October 19th, 2020. Ongoing evaluation of circumstances related to the virus and the updated recommendations of the Centers for Disease Control and the Texas Department of State Health Services indicated the conditions necessitating the disaster declaration have and will continue to exist for a period extending beyond October 5th, 2020. The recommendation is that the City Council consider the resolution as set forth in the caption.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? City Secretary, call the roll.
So Councilmember Troyer made the motion. Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson?
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Bree?
Aye.
And those were all aye votes.
Okay, thank you. Now we're down to the reports. City Manager, do you have anyone to speak?
Yes, sir. I would like our Finance Director, Dave to give you the good news about our bond sale.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. Thank you, Council and Mayor. I do want to present the results from the bond sale, and I'll just echo what Ms. Barron was saying, that through a combination of market timing, our AAA rating, and just some strong interest from the underwriters resulted in some very extraordinarily low rates. A little background on these issues. Back in May of this year, if you recall, the City Council approved 2 parameters ordinances that allowed for the issuance of both the GO bonds and the water and sewer bonds. Market conditions at that time were just not favorable for an issue. We were in the height of the pandemic. There was still a lot of shutdown in the state, and the markets were actually up for grabs at that point. So the parameters ordinance allowed City Council to authorize the future sale of bond obligations, and we consulted with our financial advisor as to the best time to go out for the bond sale. We also were waiting for the rolls to come in to make sure that the rolls were sufficient to support the future bond sales. Included in the GO bond sale were funds for the refunding of the General Obligation Bond Series 2009. There was new money in that GO bond sale, and that was part of the November 2015 bond election. For both the GO bonds and the water and sewer revenue bonds, there were 6 bidders on each of those. They were competitively sold. The low bid on the GO bonds was from FHN Financial Capital Markets, and that resulted in a true interest cost of 1.41%. These are on 16-year bonds that are callable after 9 years. The new money portion, totaling $12.7 million, will support the planned capital projects. And for the refunding portion of the GO bonds, there's a net present value savings of $143,000 or 7.6%, with no extension of that debt or the time frame for paying that off. And just for your information, it is generally seen as positive to move forward with a refunding if you're seeing present value savings of between 2 and 3%. So we far exceeded that benchmark. The new money portion of the GO bonds are going to support a number of projects. Street projects include Civic Circle and Valley Parkway, Cohen Avenue, Valley Ridge, and the Indian Oaks subdivision. Now, there's also money in the GO bond issue for the Park Trail at Valley Ridge. Moving on to the water and sewer revenue bonds, the low bid was from Morgan Stanley, and the true interest costs for those were also 1.41%, with a term of 16 years, and the bonds are callable after 9 years. Proceeds from the sale of those bonds will go towards covering the wastewater treatment plant capacity improvements, Whippoorwill Force Main, the Prairie Creek Lift Station, some other water and sewer infrastructure improvements. The city has historically enjoyed some very low rates, but with the market timing and the strong interest and the city's AAA bond rating, this resulted in some extraordinary low rates, as I mentioned earlier. There's a table that I provided in a memo that showed what historically we've received over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've been about half of what their interest rate was, about a half of what we've seen in the past. Given the strong interest and the good markets currently, we're considering moving forward with a parameters ordinance like we've done in the past, or we've done most recently for the issuance of COs, which would occur next year, and possibly the GO and the water and sewer revenue bonds as well. Closing on the bonds will take place November 3rd, was when we'll get our monies, and we'll also do the refunding of the 2009 series bonds. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
So, Dave, you kind of beat me to the punch here, because I saw this and my jaw dropped. And my immediate response was, in my head, was, go get as much money as you can at this rate without creating a problem.
So Councilman Ferguson, I had similar thoughts, and we are in discussions with our financial advisor on that very issue. So certainly with the election looming in just a few weeks, we don't know what kind of impacts that will have, but we would like to have those parameter ordinances ready and prepared to move forward when our financial advisor tells us it's going to be good timing. So Jason really hit a home run here, I will tell you. I've never seen rates this low, and neither had he. So this really is a home run, but it's a combination not only of the timing, but certainly that AAA bond rating, which means so much on the market.
I just got to say, this is one take away from free money.
It is. That's how I've been describing it. That's all we had on the report, Mayor.
Well, since Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson didn't say it, I expected him to get this out. We'll take two.
Okay, you.
Okay, we'll call for the council's comments. We'll start with Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Jones.
No report.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Mayor, just quickly, if you have not been in Thrive, go. It's amazing. It's a great facility. Even just wandering around outside, if you don't want to be indoors, it's beautiful, and the staff there is outstanding. They've really hit a home run. My wife and I have been going pretty regularly, so it's amazing. So well done. Great job, city staff. Great job to our contractors for getting the building, even with the flooding damage, up and running. It's a home run all the way around. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't actually have a report for the Arts and MCL Grand, but if James Kunke is there, he may have something.
Okay.
You may not be a panelist tonight. James, you there?
James is not a panelist tonight.
Hang on 1 second. We'll get him old-fashioned. We'll get him in here.
Okay.
He's coming.
Okay, well, to fill the gap, I will give you one item. The Louisville Talk City Speaker Series will present New York Times bestselling author Sandra Brown on Thursday, October 15th. There's a limited number of guests that will be allowed to attend the event, and you can go through mclgrandtix.com to reserve a place if you'd like to hear. And then I'll turn it over to Mr. Kunke.
Thank you, Councilman. There's really only two big events coming up that we'd like to talk about at MCL Grand. One you've mentioned is Sandra Brown, certainly a nationally known name as part of our speaker series. In addition, I encourage people to look at the website for the Lake Cities Ballet Theater. Lake Cities Ballet Theater is doing 3 performances of Dracula this year. They will be smaller and spaced out, obviously, because of COVID restrictions. 2 will be live, 1 will be recorded for later. So you'll be able to stream and purchase tickets for that performance as well. We're also focusing heavily on our public art program right now, Councilman, and we hope to have some really good news coming up any day now. So I encourage you to keep an eye out on that as well.
So how could I forget, because I'd seen it that Dracula was coming, and I always push everybody every year, you have to see this show. For people who, for whatever reason, say, well, I don't know about ballet, trust me, this is just pure, creative, crazy entertainment. If you've not seen it, you need to.
Thank you.
Here. Councilmember Troyer?
Yes, I just want to concur with what Councilman Gilmore said about Thrive. I took my wife Roxanne to see it, and she was overwhelmed with how much is there. So it's definitely something people need to see. But I do want to also compliment the staff on pulling off virtual Western Days. Was a great event. I watched Gavel to Gavel. Even while I was driving, I was streaming it on my phone, and it actually gave me the opportunity to promote Louisville to some of my customers. Great job on the virtual Western Days.
Thank you. Next item, closed session. City Secretary.
In accordance with Texas Government Code Subchapter D, 1, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, pending litigation, legal issues related to 34 Texas Administrative Code Section 3.334. 2, Section 551.072, real estate, property acquisition. 3, Section 551.087, economic development, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations.
Okay. Does anyone need a few minutes here? Okay. We'll go into closed session now. Thank you. We'll reconvene back into session. Is there any action to be taken?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Got a motion and second. City Secretary, call the roll.
Show Councilmember Jones made the motion. Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green seconded the motion. Councilmember Troyer.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ferguson.
Aye.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Aye.
Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Green.
Aye.
Mayor, those were all aye votes.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Night.